1. The live panel opened with buzzed anticipation. As White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt entered the studio alongside Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the set, a glossy mix of American and Canadian flags, promised a civil discussion on trade and diplomacies amid rising U.S.-Canada tensions. Initially, Leavitt delivered predictable lines, touting American economic leverage, defending recent U.S. tariff decisions, and referencing Canada's dependency on the U.S. Mark Carney appeared composed, seated quietly behind a modest lectern, nodding politely while awaiting his turn. The audience was evenly split, leaning into the early signs of a debate that would quickly escalate too. The atmosphere shifted sharply when Leavitt turned confrontational. With a thin smile, she declared, "Canada has been ripping off hardworking Americans for decades, selling maple syrup diplomacy and using Trudeau virtue signaling to mask weakness." She mocked Canadian healthcare as inefficient and its climate policy as empty posturing. "Isn't this just national branding for export?" she sneered. The live audience gasped, shots of Canadian guests visible in the crowd. Host questions grew tense as Leavitt continued. Carney remained silent, but his eyes hardened, and viewers sensed this was more than rhetoric. 3. When Carney finally spoke, he did so with measured cadence, not fury or sarcasm, but clarity and authority. He began by contextualizing Canada's economic contribution. "We are the United States' largest trading partner, supporting millions of American jobs through supply chains and market integration." He calmly outlined Canada's role during the 2008 financial crisis and its ongoing global leadership in resource and diplomatic cooperation. Then, turning directly to Leavitt, he asked, "Did you prepare for this conversation, or was it meant to provoke ratings?" His voice remained calm. The host camera cut to Leavitt, mid-rebuttal, flustered, momentarily silent as the studio erupted into applause. 5. As the broadcast continued, Carney deepened his case with precision, citing shared NATO missions, mutual investment protections, and Canada's role in de-escalating several global diplomatic standoffs. He didn't grandstand, he educated. "You criticize our healthcare? It's not perfect, but it ensures no child goes bankrupt because they break an arm." The audience broke into spontaneous applause. Leavitt tried to interrupt, but was met with a firm redirect from the moderator, who now seemed intent on letting Carney finish uninterrupted. "What we're seeing," Carney added, "is not a difference in policy, but in posture. One seeks solutions, the other seeks attention." The remark wasn't just directed at Leavitt. It was a quiet indictment of the performance politics that had overtaken serious discourse. At that moment, the momentum had fully shifted. What began as a clash now looked more like a public lesson, and viewers were taking notes. 6. Off camera, the control room scrambled. Producers whispered urgently into earpieces, debating whether to cut to commercial or let the fireworks continue. Ratings were spiking, viewership climbing with each verbal exchange, but something deeper was unfolding. On screen, Leavitt's composure cracked just slightly, her smile more forced, her responses clipped. Sensing the shift, she pivoted to personal jabs, bringing up Carney's dual citizenship and accusing him of loyalty confusion. The move backfired spectacularly. Carney didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward slightly and said, "I was born with 2 passports in one. Principal cooperation over conflict. That's what leadership requires in the 21st century." The studio fell silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. On social media, viewers began quoting his line in real time. The phrase "one principle" trended globally. Meanwhile, Leavitt blinked, visibly shaken not just by his words, but by how calmly they landed, disarming her aggression like wind erasing flame. 7. Backstage, producers from rival networks were already texting their booking teams, "Get Carney, he just owned Leavitt on live TV." In the green room, staffers on both sides watched the delayed feed in stunned silence. Leavitt's aides whispered among themselves, exchanging tight glances as they realized their talking point strategy had backfired. Back in the studio, Carney had moved on, subtly shifting the conversation to shared North American priorities, climate resilience, cybersecurity, and indigenous rights partnerships, while Leavitt struggled to re-enter the debate without sounding defensive. Last attempt came in the form of a forced joke. Well, I guess Canadians really do know how to say sorry, just not when it counts. The room didn't laugh. Instead, Carney looked at her, unblinking, and replied, "We apologize. When we must, but we don't confuse loudness with leadership." The silence that followed was deafening. The camera panned across the studio, a sea of faces no longer entertained by confrontation, but captivated by clarity. 9. As media outlets dissected every second of the clash, one clip in particular gained iconic status. Carney, calmly adjusting his mic after delivering the line about one principle, followed by the stunned expression on Leavitt's face. It became a symbol not just of rhetorical skill, but of how power can be wielded without arrogance. Late-night hosts made jokes, yes, but even they treated the moment with unusual respect. Trevor Noah called it the cleanest takedown since Obama roasted Trump in 2011. Think pieces flooded Substack and Medium, praising Carney's strategy of non-escalation as dominance. Meanwhile, communications experts began citing the incident in seminars on public diplomacy and narrative control. One viral tweet summed it up bluntly: Karoline brought noise, Carney brought nationhood. The exchange had transcended its own medium. It was no longer just television. It had become a lesson in grace under fire, while the world was still watching. 10. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects extended far beyond headlines. University courses in political science and media ethics began referencing the segment as a case study. At a Harvard Kennedy School forum, a visiting professor described Carney's response as textbook modern diplomacy, measured, strategic, emotionally intelligent. Meanwhile, Canadian embassies reported a noticeable uptick in international goodwill, with diplomats attributing the change in part to Carney's composed defense of Canadian values on global television. Leavitt, for her part, face-mounting scrutiny. Though she maintained a defiant tone publicly, insiders whispered of mounting tension within her communications team. Bookings slowed. And in a surprising twist, a bipartisan group of former press secretaries issued a joint statement emphasizing the need for professionalism and international respect in televised discourse, an unmistakable rebuke. The message was clear. Credibility wasn't about winning arguments, but about how you chose to hold your ground when challenged in that moment. Carney had held it with elegance few could match. Asterisk, 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 asterisk.